So Diane, consult track. We've spent many an hour watching consultations and putting those consults into a objective structured matrix for feedback to the clinicians. Your thoughts around why it's so important that this happens and the absolute objectivity of the process that we use. You've scored consults, I've scored consults. Just for the benefit of the viewers, is why this matters and why it's a very fair process and why it's hugely important.
I think first of all why it matters is it matters because it matters to the client. How they are handled, dealt with, made to feel is of supreme importance to them, and I think we miss that point a lot in practice, especially when vets are busy doing consults and they're focused on the clinical element of that. They forget the people element, whereas the client is coming at it from a non-clinical element and purely from a personal element. So to miss that to them is of huge importance. So that's why it's important that we are aware of it and that we follow a set procedure of how we do things.
And the process with Consult Track, where we score against those 7 key parameters in the 7 steps, which is a Calgary, Cambridge derived consultation structure, is we're scoring them objectively. So when we score, we're scoring to see whether the event actually happened. For example, did the vet greet the owner? Did the vet greet the pet? Did the vet use a pet's name? Did the vet use the word recommend? Did they create an estimate? Either they did or they didn't. These are absolutely objective scoring mechanisms.
And I think, again, when you're in the moment, so, when the vets are in the moment and they're doing the consult, they may think that they're doing some of this stuff. But when you watch them back, it's very plain to see that some of this stuff just doesn't happen. They don't necessarily focus so much on the pet. They don't use the pet's name. They don't engage with the client very well at all. And you may think that you are doing all of these things, but unless you're monitored and then measured and then you use that and watch it back, you won't realise that you're not actually doing a lot of this stuff, and it's of huge importance to that client.
And one of the really interesting things about where you look at a consultation, they usually start off pretty good. There's usually a good level of preparation and rapport building and asking, what can we do today? How's, Tom doing? But then from that moment forward, it seems to go completely, as you said, into clinical. I now see a disease process and I need to give the disease this information and this treatment plan. And that's when we seem to lose the emotional connection between the patient and the owner and the clinician, the patient and the owner. And it seems to tail down towards the end, and certainly the lack of recommendations or treatment plans and the rebooking of the follow-up and the reassessments, that's commercially viable as well as medically imperative for the patient.
It is. And again, sometimes as well, the client can then leave the room confused as to, well, what was the diagnosis, what was the outcome? And it might be that we because we've not been very clear about that as part of that process of the consult. So it's really, really important that we do, have a plan that we follow. Again, not to try and turn people into this robotic 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not about that. It's, it's about delivering a structure and being human and making sure that we don't forget that this person has this massively emotive connection, not necessarily a clinical one. Very different to how the vet will see it. And it's really important that we don't lose that awareness of that, which I think is what happens.
It was summed up lovely the other day. A colleague and I were discussing how we as veterinary professionals describe our operation list tomorrow. If you think about the ops that are coming in tomorrow, we often say, we've got a cruciate op in tomorrow, or we've got a massive lump in tomorrow. No, you haven't. You've got George the Labrador who's got a knee problem. Or Jenny the Springer who's got a bad cyst that needs removing. We seem to lose the human-animal pet connection and just see the disease process. And this is what Consult Track helps with, changing that culture.
That's it, definitely, because that the client doesn't even have the clinical on their radar. They're worried, they're emotionally worried about their pet. They're not clinically thinking about that at all. They're just thinking, here it is, make him well, make him better. It's such an emotional, and for us to not even acknowledge that pet, or call him by his name, and make a fuss, and what happens is they do start off well. They start off very well with the greeting, and it's all really, really lovely. and then we forget that. And we start going clinical, and it's just you to watch it back. And I think if vets never do that, if they never watch themselves back, they'll never realise how that looks to a client.
Yeah.
Because you'll never know you've done it.
So Consult Track is a simple process, easy process, objective, clean. Just this is what you did, this is how we've scored you, and this is how it helps.
Yeah, and again, I think, you know, from a business point of view, to use this within your practice with your vets as well, from a management point of view, for me, this is not something to go around then beating people up about, you know, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's to look at what did we do, how can we do it better, so that you're continually improving that process, not to kind of beat people over the head with it. And for me, if we can continually improve every day what we do, that can only be a good thing.
And that's what CPD is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Continuous professional development, and this is part of it. So we would strongly recommend Consult Track to everybody.
Absolutely.
Yes.